This is Gemara Avodah Zarah Daf Lamid Zayin. We're holding on Lamid Vav Amid Beis. We're about 8 lines from the bottom as the Gemara asks, Mai al Davar Acher. As we saw, there was Gizeirais of Piton Misham Shmanam, Shmanam Misham Yenam, Yenam Misham Benoiseh, Benoiseh Misham Davar Acher, Davar Acher Misham Davar Acher. So now we're towards the end of that whole Megillah. We're up to Mai al Davar Acher. But once again, we like all the learning to be an incredible schos refuah shalema for Legvriel Simcha ben Miriam Ahuva b'soich sha'ar choli Yisrael. The Koyach HaTorah should continue providing the ultimate refuahis and yeshuahis b'siyata dishmaya. Says the Gemara, Mai al Davar Acher misham Davar Acher. Rav Nachman Yitzchak. Gazir al tinoik akum sheyitami beziva. A tinoik of a guy is tame ziva. Why? Shloi tinoik Yisrael ragalatzlai b'mishkav zachar. We don't want a Yiddish boy to be with the Goyish boys because we're afraid of mishkav zachar. We're afraid that if they're going to hang out with each other, the Jewish boys will learn from the Goyish practices, which will lead to inappropriate relationships even between boys, and therefore they made such a gezerah. Damar Rav Zera, Tsar Gadol Hayali Eitzel Rav Asi. Tsar Gadol Hayali Eitzel Rav Asi, Rav Asi Eitzel Rav Yechon, Rav Yechon Eitzel Rav Yanai. Rav Yanai Eitzel Rav Nosson ben Amram, 4 lines from the bottom. Rav Nosson ben Amram Eitzel Rav Rebbe. Tinoke akom imasemetam viziva v'amerli ben yoimoi. 1 day old. Shabasi itzor Rav Chi amerli ben teshanim, 9 years old. V'yemechad shabasi v'ratzitzi devar levnei Rebbe. When I came and I presented the matter in front of Rebbe amerli hanach devarai, leave my words. Hanach devarai v'olchos divrei Rav Chi. Damar tinoke akom imasemetam viziva ben tisha shanim v'yemechad, not from the birth, but rather from 9 years old. Hayil, as we turn over to Zayin Amud Aleph, what is the reason? Says the Gemara, because at age 9, Hayil v'roi libia, therefore mitame nami beziva, not at birth, but rather age 9. Amar Ravina, says Ravina, another halacha that we can learn from here, Hilkach, therefore, ha tinoikes akum baskimol shan v'yemechad. Since the Roy Bebiya from 3 years old, the time and Beziva. Pshita explains the Gemara. Perhaps when it comes to a 9-year-old boy, he knows to be margul. He could draw someone else to doing the Avera. Whereas a 3-year-old girl doesn't have that nature. Kamash Malah, and that's the Chiddush. Even a 3-year-old girl of a Avodas Chachavim is considered Tameh. Continues the Gemara, let's go back to the Sugya of Shemanam, the oils of the Goyim. Says the Gemara, Mistamech v'azor Rav Yudah Nisiya. Akavsi Rav Simlai Shammai was leaning on the shoulder of Rav Simai. Amrei Simlai, lo yisi amar jeisa medrash v'inay asinim beis medrash ketarnu eshamen. When they said the shaman is mutter amalai b'yaminu tatir afis apas. This brings us back to we learned the Gemaras of Pas, and we spoke out how it's very unclear the levels of Gzeirais. It's very unclear whether Pas is a problem, is not a problem, v'chulu. Now we have a little more of an insight. Amalai and Cain karulan beis dino sharia. If this is true that they were mekel on shemen, and then they were mekel on pas, so then it's a bezdin sharia. It's a bezdin that makes things mutter. Tetinan. Hey, Rav Yossi ben Yehuda in the first one, al ayil kimsa tachan. He was made on ayil of grasshoppers. Tachan is tar. Val mashke beis mitzvachai and looks of beis mitzvachai tachan. That's tar as well. The third item, val dikra v'lemesa misav. The third item is one who touches a corpse. Al dikarev lemisa misav is tamei. Karle Yosef Sharaya. And after saying 2 things are mutter, or dachan, or tar, they called him Yosef the Sharia. So what do we see? Yosef ben Ezra was criticized from being too mekel. Rav Yehuda Nesiya was worried that his bezdin would do the same if they were the ones that said that shemen and pas were mutter. Amar lei responds the Gemara, Hasam shara tlas. Over there, it wasn't just two. There was a third as well. Umar shara chada. Vishara mar chada chriti. Akarti tarta nudavion. It would still only be two, and therefore we don't have to be concerned that you're going to get the shame of bezdin sharaya. Amar lei, I know sharia chriti. I want to be mekel on something else. Meaning, I already was makel on something else, and therefore the bread will be number 3. Titanan. You get if I don't come home for 12 months. It's not a get. We learned on this. The Rabbi Seinu say the Rabbanan said it's not a get, but let it get married. For Amina Man Rabbi Seinu, who are these that said they're allowed to get married? Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel Bezdin Tisharu Mishcha. That same Bezdin that was mekel on oil. So says the Gemara, Savri la Rav Yosi. They held like Rav Yosi Damar Zmanu Shashar Mechichalav. And therefore, once the 12 months pass, the get is lemafreya chal, and therefore, even though he died, it's going to be a valid get. So says the Gemara, Rav Yehuda Nesiya's bezdin already had 2 cases they were mekel, the shemen and the get, and therefore, if they're going to have a third one, they're going to get this name of bezdin sharaya. So Rav Yehuda says that what does it mean, Rabbi Seinu? V'amar Rav Abba Berei Rav Chibar Rav Yehuda Nesiya Hayralai V'loi Haydalai. Kol shaita v'amri la kol siyaita. Amrli Rav Elazar Lusaba. Kol siyaita. They were not maida to the din of his bezdin. Therefore, there was no concern. Continues the Gemara. Amar le Rav Elazar Lusaba. Kisharita. When you were mekel on the case of get, to loy asi oidil malach shteim azachidish. When were you mekel? Were you mekel because he did not come home? Or you allowed her only to after 12 months, lo yikayim tonight, because he wasn't mekayim tonight. Says the Gemara, let's go back into Gittin. We cast the kash over there, the Tanan. Have they get? Why? Tonight? And we asked on that Mishnah straight. Didn't come. Tonight. So says the Gemara, why are you asking on me? Ask on the Mishnah. We're 15 lines. From the bottom, the first word in line is Chaydesh. Answers Gemara, Ina Chanami. El Misham, the Havias, Bahu Minyana. Because you were there at that time, that's why we're asking you the Shayla. Continues the Gemara, so we have this Machlaikas in Yehuda Nesiya and Chaveira regarding the case of get. So Amar Abaye, I call Maidim L'Shatete Chamim in Artika. Everyone is masking that if the husband says, this is your get when the sun comes out from the sheath, when it rises, L'chi, Nafka, Kamer, he means when it comes out. V'chi Mayis, Beleli, if he dies at night, Gelach Hamiso, it's considered a Gelach Hamiso, which is not Chal. Al Minah Shatete Chamim in Artika. That means Me'achshav. That means it's conditional, which means it's Chal back to now. Why? So what's the machlokes? If the sun comes out. And therefore, if it's chal, unless they do Rav Yosi, doesn't know the time of the document does not prove it. Therefore, will not be chal. Gufa says the Gemara. We listed a whole bunch of cases of kulas. Hey, Rav Yosi ben as a straight al ayel kimsa on the grasshoppers dachan that are mutter tar. V'mashu with the chaya dachan. V'al of the misa. If someone touches the corpse, misav is tamei. Karveli Yosef sharia. My ayel kimsa. What's that first case of the grasshoppers? Our Papa Amar Sheishiva says our Papa it's a Sheishiva. Rechibar Ami Mishmei. The Ula says Amar Suzbil. Machlek is what exactly it is. And what's the machlokes regarding whether grasshopper with a long head is allowed to be eaten? What's the case? The case is susbil, as we turn over to Lamzayin of a base. But everyone's masking at this grasshopper with a long head. That's not a shayla, and that's going to be aser. That the wings cover over its roiv of the body. What level of roiv is necessary? And now we go into the second case, 4 lines down. The second case that he was makel on, says the Gemara, is what? Is Valmashka basement Bachaya Dachan is Tahar. My Dachan. Rava Amar Dachan. Mamish Shmuel Amar Dachan Milatame Achirin. There's always 2 levels of Tahira that could be discussed. There's actually Tahar, no Tuma at all. Which means what? Which means it's itself Tahar, excuse me. And then there's a second level of Tahira that it's Ba'atzim Tameh. Just what? It can make something else Tameh. Avotoma Atzvan Yishben. That's Shmuel. Rav Amino Dacham Mamish Kasaber. Thomas Mashkin Derabanan. The whole din of Thomas Mashkin is a din Derabanan. Chigaz Rabanan Thomas Mashkin De Alma. Avol Mashka Bemitzlachayo Loi Gazu Rabanan. Says the Gemara, Shmuel Amar Dacham Tameh Achirin Avol Thomas Atzvan Yishben. Why? Because Kasaber Thomas Mashkin Deraisa. And what's the Rabbanan? The next level. It comes down at the Machlekes Rav and Shmuel's. At what level Thomas Mashkin is the Araisa? At what level Thomas Mashkin is the Rabbanan? Continues the Gemara. Val Dikrav Lemisa Misav. When it touches a corpse is Tameh. Vakarli Yosef Sharia. Says the Gemara, Yosef Asra Mi Bayile. I don't understand. Should be saying Yosef is the one, the forbidder, not Yosef the permitter, because the Gemara thinks right now, it's talking about the third case. In that case, he's being machmir. Void daraisi. What do you mean it's in daraisi? That what? If you touch a corpse, daraisi, you're tamei. So what's going on over here? Says the way you're right, daraisi the ikariv tamei, the ikariv bid the ikariv tar. You touch something that touches something, there's no tamei. When he was guys there, I feel the ikariv touching something that touches the corpse, that'll be matame. Excuse me, and he said that as the din daraisa. Frag the Gemara, what do you mean? The ikariv is also nami daraisa. Who dechsev chashiga tame yitma. Anything that touches should become tamei. So says the Gemara, Amru Rabbanan kamid Rav Mishin Mar Zucha. Parade Rav Nachman, Damar Mishay Rav Nachman, Daraisa what? The Ikari V'chiburin. Then it's Tomas Shiva. Something touches something else that touches the corpse. While it's connected, then there's Tomas Shiva. Sheloi B'chiburin. When it's not in contact after it comes off, it's no longer touching. How long is it Tameh? It's only Tomas Erev. So what was his Gezerah? Ve'asa inu ve'gaza afilu shaloi bechiburin Thomas Shiva. Ve'asa inu ve'okmi adaraisa. So the Chacham came along and said, "There's Thomas Shiva." Yishben Yoezer said that it even has the din daraisa. Says the Gemara daraisa mai. What is the daraisa that we're referring to? Techsev hanogea b'meis chol nefesh adam v'tami shivas yamim uksev chol shigaba tami yitma. Uksev nefesh hanagas titma ha'arif. HaKetzad, what are the 3 psukim teaching us? Kan b'chiburin, kan b'shaloi b'chiburin. One is whether it's touching still or not. Amar lahu Rava. Says Rava, and this Rishi ben Yezer, halacha was sent in front of Rava. So Rava comes along and Rava says, Lava mina lachu loitet lube buki siriki. Did I not tell you, do not hang empty pictures for Rav Nachman? I'm Rav Nachman. Hachi Amar Rav Nachman. This is what Rav Nachman really said. Sofik temperatures Rabbi meheter leh. Aye, but we learn out from Saita, not that way. The Maaseh Rishus Yachid, Haftama Rishus Yachid, Haftama Rishus Yachid. Hamrav Yechid Allah Chavein Mayrikin, and then Vasiyu Varila Ruye says Gemara bring your Raya Tanem Yachid Vidaim Erkoyres Naatz Lahem. Says Rabbi Yehuda that what Yosef and Eliezer put beams into the ground. V'amar ad kan Rosh Hashanah ma'akav shesayachid kasik with Rabbi Yani Amrlu Hamaya b'shik also diminahara zilu tivilu. That what he said was, this is water in the river, go and immerse yourself and become tar. Another case in which there was a case of Safik Toma, that they came along to help the story. Stop over here, we'll pick up from the next Gezerah, the Gezerah of Shlaka is Bishal Akum, in the next year, B'siyata Dishmai.